This is not for the faint-hearted. Tonight I'll be sharing 5 terrifying true stories that recently occurred in 2023. Events so chilling that their imprint still haunts all involved. Viewer discretion is advised. Desert Dread. Seeking lodging for an upcoming job interview, Shelby booked an Arizona Airbnb site unseen. She required only cheap rates and proximity to her interview site. Thus, she unwittingly selected a bare-bones rental isolated deep in the desert, at the end of a dusty rural road rarely traveled. Arriving after sundown, Shelby found the property unnervingly cut off from civilization, the tiny house engulfed by darkness. Nevertheless, she tried settling in that first evening to practice interview questions on her laptop. Around 9 p.m., the ominous tap of fingernails on glass interrupted Shelby's studies. She whipped towards the window, heart racing, but no shape occupied the impenetrable night beyond. Uneasy, Shelby checked doors and peered outside with her phone's flashlight. Only wind-stirred sands met her gaze. The next day, Shelby aced her interview, exploring the sites afterwards before returning to her Airbnb. Once again, practicing questions around 9 p.m., the same phantom tap rattled the window pane. Shelby sprinted over only to discover nothing, no footprints marring the fine desert dust. But something had made that sound. In bed hours later, a loud click woke Shelby from inside the room's closet. Grabbing her phone and laptop, Shelby fled to her car where she called 911 in a panic. Police accompanied the terrified woman back inside to quickly gather her belongings. Shelby then drove 30 minutes to find a hotel, frightened of spending another minute alone on that property, whose opaque darkness perhaps concealed a more sinister threat, one against which locked doors were no defense. Who or what made those sounds? Why did this entity target Shelby? Local police uncovered no leads, and Shelby now knows better than lured by cheap rentals into the unknown, for that furtive tap and click implied she was not alone, suggesting the high cost of isolation. Backyard intruder. Seeking pastoral paradise, newlyweds Cheryl and John purchased a secluded homestead deep in rural Georgia, eager to start a family. But their dreams turned nightmarish through 2 terrifying midnight encounters with a mysterious intruder. The first incident began innocuously, with old-fashioned music waking the couple. A static-y vintage tune John traced to an antique radio sitting oddly in their moonlit yard. After switching it off, movement at the forest edge seized John's focus. There, observing him, stood 3 shadowy figures, featureless in the gloom. John hurried inside for his revolver while Cheryl phoned the police, pulse racing. Yet by the time John returned, revolver raised, the figures had vanished. Despite an extensive search, no trace of them emerged. The couple hardly slept that night, plagued by the stranger's obscure motives. Had the intruders sought theft, or were they motivated by something more sinister? Each creaking floorboard now elicited dread. John installed new locks while Cheryl jumped at every scratching tree branch. They even considered moving away altogether. A week passed quietly until the vintage crackling erupted once more, even louder than before. John cautiously stepped out back, discovering a rain-drenched stranger clutching another antique radio. Crazed eyes gleaming with malice locked onto John's as the man lurched closer. When mere yards separated them, John's warning shots exploded the night. The stranger fled into the darkness. Police confiscated John's firearm, but again the saturated grass hid any tracks. Why target John and Cheryl? What bred such invidiousness? Seeking consolation, the couple reflected that perhaps no fully satisfactory explanation exists. They could barricade their doors and install cameras. Yet darkness often arises from places unforeseen. Their only defense entailed grasping light, while strengthening their spirit against encroaching shadows. The Smiling Spectre. Callie, a nursing student, began a new job at a dementia ward. There she met Lena, a sweet-tempered patient who sadly confided being terrorized by voices and a leering man in black lurking in her room's corner. Initially dubious, Callie gently soothed the frightened woman's concerns before leaving her to sleep. Yet later, alone fetching fresh linens, Callie felt an uncanny pressure seize her shoulder. Whirling around, she found only empty air, but every hair on Callie's neck bristled with the certainty she was not alone. Uneasily glancing about, she stepped into the hallway, only to glimpse at the door's small window a pale, grinning face leering back. Callie staggered backward, scarcely believing the spectral sight. For there, sporting the same eerie smile described by Lena, hovered the infamous man in black himself. Callie screamed, her cries stirring the ward. Staff rushed to her side but found no skulking intruder, neither hidden passage nor unlocked window by which he could have entered or vanished. Yet despite the lack of evidence, Callie recognized genuine paranormal terror. Seeking to calm her rattled nerves, she sat with Lena, who seemed likewise soothed by Callie's presence. However, in conversing, Callie casually described her frightful encounter to better understand Lena's delusions. But rather than find empathy, her innocuous details inexplicably sent the poor woman into hysterics. Lena's panicked cries forced sedation as Callie looked on, horrified by the reaction her words induced. Soon after, Callie quit her position, still haunted by lingering questions. Had she merely hallucinated that entire surreal scenario? Or could unnatural forces actually breach reality's flimsy veil to prey upon us? In either speculation, Callie found only madness and nightmares. Hoping time might exorcise the memory, she instead found her thoughts dominated by that image of the phantom, black-clad figure hovering behind fractured glass, watching, waiting. Seeking escape, Callie relocated across the country. Yet despite throwing herself into new chances and friendships, she struggled to bond with people, plagued by feelings of distrust and isolation. Callie described these emotions as irrational overreactions. Nevertheless, she often perceived hostile glints in even harmless eyes. Gradually, this anxiety eroded Callie's self-confidence as well as several nascent relationships. People she once considered friends drifted away, wounded by her aloofness. One day, a colleague invited Callie out after work. She wavered, fearing rejected invitations strained their rapport. Perhaps tonight she might linger for just one drink? Yet, exiting the building, Callie glimpsed a passing stranger sporting a familiar rictus grin that raised gooseflesh and dashed her small hopes. The phantom man in black seemingly awaited Callie everywhere. His lingering psychic residue infected countless faces with sinister aspects. Thus Callie declined her colleague's offer and withdrew home alone to her one place of solace. Sinking onto the welcome couch, Callie closed her eyes, sighing with relief. But then behind her sounded a sly whisper. "Welcome home, Callie." Callie whirled around with a horrified scream. Yet only shadows occupied her apartment's cramped intimacy. The phantom's ghastly words had sounded directly into her ear. Shaken profoundly, Callie recognized her nightmare emerging from imagination into reality. The man in black had somehow crossed all physical and psychic bounds to invade Callie's last sanctuary. His lurking, permeating presence promised no hope of escape or peace. That harrowing night marked the end of Callie's struggle with encroaching darkness. Crazed by lack of sleep and paranoid visions, she finally succumbed, becoming but a vacant shell. Her bodily form remains, smiling blankly by day in a padded room. Only the eyes still glimmer with the shine of understanding that we fragile mortals cannot evade those shadows determined to claim us. Phantom Pianist. Our fourth account involves a young pizza delivery man named Tim. One stormy midnight shift, he's called to an unusual home on a rural road. Approaching the isolated dwelling, Tim is struck by the complete darkness inside. The only light emanates from a room deeper within, where a piano plays haunting melodies. Tim knocks loudly but receives no answer besides a muffled "over here." He finds the cracked front door swings open at his touch. Stepping gingerly inside toward the piano music, Tim calls out again, but still no one appears. The home's interior smells of musty neglect. Tim retreats warily to the door. The playing stops, and a voice implores Tim to bring the pizza inside. Tim requests which room, but the hesitant answer puts him further on edge. Given no choice, Tim inches toward the music, yet upon stealing a glance inside the room finds it completely empty, the piano unmanned. Spooked by this phantom scene, Tim flees to his car and returns uneaten pizza to his confused co-workers. Tim knows houses cannot order pizza on their own. Someone or something was manipulating events inside. Yet who or why remains clouded in uncertainty, leaving lingering unease. Unease Omen. Our final account follows teens defiling a deserted church with an Ouija, Invoking spirits inside the desecrated chapel, James, Sean and Rob joked as the planchette crept across the cobwebbed floor. But loud cracks from the altar interrupted their irreverent game, eliciting screams. The thrill-seekers dashed outside, gripped by real fear. Only later did pride impel their return, to rescue the abandoned board. Yet by the light of day their prize had disappeared, apparently claimed by the very forces they'd mocked. With nerves shaken and questions unanswered, the group left haunted by the events. None dared speak of that strange night, when reckless temptations of fate brought them face-to-face with powers peering back from darkness's unknown veil, forces whose secrets and motives lie eternally shrouded on that godforsaken hilltop. Friends, these strange, scary tales prove real life outweighs fiction's darkest fancies. Though we shrink from shadows, courage conquers fear. Darkness flees light's revealing rays, so share your chilling truths below. Can you top these? Press that like button and also subscribe now, if you dare.